Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a interesting aggro blood type deck running Rich the Archdemon and a Maelstrom Serpent. Saw it on Twitter, was like, this deck could be interesting, so wanted to give it a go. It hasn't done too bad, about 50% win rate so far with the deck, and not too shabby overall. It's definitely not as good as some of the other more refined decks, especially with the old Blood King set. But it's definitely not a bad deck overall either, so if you want something different to play, because I know May is a slow month, that's just how it is with Shadowverse, until we get the new cards at the end of this month, it's probably going to be a long slog, so we're going to get right into it and check it out. So our first matchup is against Sword, probably still one of the strongest decks in rotation,
You must die.
so not overly surprising. Decide to dump a couple of lower cards so we can go for something hopefully a little bit better and work with that a little bit more. So we do get the Goblin, which is pretty much a perfect turn 1 play. It really does help against something like Sword where you can actually out-aggro them. Of course, Sword not having a turn 1 play made a big difference as well. Even going second, it's still great when Sword can't pull off that turn 1 drop. Especially with how many they have compared to other classes at the moment. Spider Wimp is also a great follow-up, allowing us to set up a nice ward with a decent stat line and get a couple damage to ourselves to hopefully set up things like Scarlet Sabure. So I do decide to trade, may as well remove that, not too big of an issue. Can go for the Razor Claw, which will get us at least that 3 damage, so it's a good start.
Victory is right before our
Sky
eyes.
Commander Celia on 4 as a 2-drop. I always feel weird when Sword plays that like that. I never understand it. I'm guessing they just want to be as wide as they can, so that's about the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, I don't see why you'd want to play that. I'd usually try and hold them myself, but I guess if you're playing Luminous Mage, I can see a little bit of why you'd probably go for it. Being able to use Luminous on 5 and then get at least 4 damage face really does help you out in the aggro space, so it's not too bad a play overall, I guess. But it does lose pretty quickly to this Scarlet, basically negating their evolve damage they just had done and allowing us to trade at least 3 for 1 here with this one card. Removing all 3 for this cost of this 1 is really nice. And even if it doesn't, it's still a really good card. So Barbarossa, still one of Sword's pretty great cards, especially in this meta. Having a recyclable 5 rush is really good. So we are at 10, so we're at 6 play points. We get to play Kind Queen Vania. Don't go for the aggression in this one, just because I know I'm already on the back foot at damage, so I really need to make sure I can get ahead, and playing Kind is going to be a really big advantage, being able to boost our health repeatedly, so hopefully we can run this this Sword player out of damage. Wayne of the Round Table, definitely a problem card. Not really something I can do much to without having to sacrifice things, which is what I would like to avoid as much as possible.
I want it. It's like gold.
Belf isn't a bad option though. We are going to be able to basically negate Belf's effect at the same time as activate our other cards, or just set up some wards, so I do end up having to spend the evolve to trade. Not the worst case scenario, especially when I'm gaining another 5 health again. Being at 15 is a pretty comfortable spot to be, especially against Sword, which doesn't tend to burst you down that quickly. 10 is more of a danger zone though.
The battle is far from over. You and I, knight.
So Luminous Mage again coming down. This is where Reach really makes a difference. Reach of the Archdemon, clearing this out as best as it can. Of course, I don't really think this play through completely, because if I did, I would have traded my 1/1 Bat into the 4/4 instead, and then went face with everything. Although going face with the Bat isn't too bad either, because it does put them very close to lethal as is. Plus, I had Snarling Chain, so it wasn't the biggest change up to the strategy, but it made a little bit of a difference. And then Sword just didn't do anything. They completely passed their turn, obviously having no way to deal with this, especially when I was at 19 health, and basically passing me the game. So next up we have Shadow. Shadow is definitely one of the weaker classes when it comes to things in rotation, with probably the strongest deck currently being Reanimate Shadow, using Zeus as its main card. It's fairly similar for Unlimited, where Amity Zeus Reanimate Shadow is actually extremely popular too, so it's not too surprising that that's the case in rotation as well. Although they do lack Atomy, which is such a crazy card in Unlimited at the moment. So the Goblin does get its drop down, it isn't too bad though. I can counter that with the Spider-Wimp pretty nicely, giving us just that little bit of an edge we might need. And that Demon Eater trade-off is actually pretty good for them. It's not the worst for me either, but it's not too bad. So we do get our turn 3 Savage Wolf going face for a little more damage. Getting him down to 17 isn't too bad, considering what we've got and what we're going up against.
This song's for you.
So I found with this deck, the advantage of it compared to most of the other Blood decks that I've played so far, especially in rotation, is that you don't tend to burn out quite as quickly, but at the same time you are sacrificing just a little bit of aggression for that, especially when you're not having the old Blood King on 5 that could really push your game. So it's a toss-up on whether you want to be able to have a couple of good late game cards and board clears, versus having a really fast deck. So it really depends on how the meta is shaping up at the time to whether this deck can at least perform even semi-decently. Which, as I said, 50-50 isn't a bad win ratio for a deck that's running Reach of the Archdemon and Maelstrom Serpent, so I'm pretty happy with it. So to go for the Blood Drinker's Brand, that does allow me to at least clear that and then play out the Dark General. With a nice little boost, we get a nice 8 damage to the face and create a little board that's harder to deal with. 2/4/3s is harder than dealing with one big card and one small card, so spreading the stats in this case was actually a reasonable choice, although the Soul Squasher was basically perfect either way. No matter which way I had have played it, they would have at least had the ability to trade. But with one Evolve Effect and Dark General in hand, we can secure lethal as long as a ward or healing isn't played, which it's not, so it's a really nice way to go for that extra lethal push. We could have also drawn it out to turn 6 and raised Reclawed and Emeralda for a pretty easy game as well. And the last game for this video will be a mirror against Blood. So Blood's still going to be aggressive. I mean, they're definitely not going to be running what I'm running, I'm sure. But they should have very similar matchups with very similar early game and very similar mid game, with only really the few late game cards like Reach and Maelstrom that should be majorly different. So turn 1 isn't really anything too surprising. I mean, we don't have a turn 1 play, they have a turn 2 play, which is decent for them, but really odd. Neither of us having the initial turn 1, but them having the advantage with the turn 2 really did help them out. Especially since aggressive classes do want to go first, so going up against a Blood class where they go first makes it hard for us to come back. Of course, go for my own Savage Wolf, basically doing their face damage. Because I mean, long term, I'm sort of at an advantage with the Spider-Wimp imps, so they will block out a fairly good chunk of damage, even though they are bursting me down very quickly. So they do open up an interesting path now. I mean, they put me in Vengeance, which is perfect. Probably the biggest mistake you can make as a Blood player is putting another Blood player into Vengeance on their turn. So really something you want to avoid against any Blood deck. So they went straight for it with those Razories, trying to get as much damage to face as possible that turn. Of course, the Scarlet is pretty decent for them, going to allow them to basically 2-for-1 this very easily.
One bite's all I need.
And I'm going to be forced to at least trade this 1-4 if I want a decent trade against it. So a 1-4 going into it, then the Scarlet gives us some value. Although it does mean they just 3-for-1 that, which is really good on the Scarlet.
To be afraid of.
But I should at least be able to get 2 kills off this one Scarlet myself, so unfortunately not. That was kind of unfortunate, but it's okay. We'll work with it. I mean, the Blood Drinker is a perfect draw, We've got our Dark General for 6 damage, which is also great. We get to keep our Razor Claw in hand, just temporarily. I didn't want to put myself at 7 in case they bursted me down with some form of combo, so I felt like this was the best line of play that I had for now. Of course, the Emeralda makes things a little more difficult though, getting a nice 6 damage to my face. So I really need to end this game next turn, so it's very draw dependent for this match now. Luckily, Savage Wolf is perfect lethal, and we're 1 health above what we needed for Razor Claw at 3, so we have our exact lethal that we needed. A Dark General would have worked too, would have been pretty good. I could have probably even got away with using my own Emeralda as long as they didn't have something to follow up next turn.
I lost.
So it was very close, but overall worked in our favour. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. This deck was just something that's a little interesting. We're probably going to have some more interesting decks as the month goes on, because like I said, May is the slowest month. So until there's some big shakeups going on, there's not really many decks that we haven't already looked at. We may go back and look at some and see how they're performing now. We'll definitely still cover some unlimited stuff here and there as we go as well. We've got to keep things interesting, but still expect your daily content and Shadowverse news. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and hit that like button, subscribe. You'll find deck list in the description below, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.